Suddha Bhakata Sharanarenu Bharana Anukula Bhakata Seva Paramasiddhi Premalati Koromula Madhavati Ti Bhakti Janani Jatane Palana Kori Krishna Basati Basati Boli Parama Adare Bori Gora Maharaja Bastane Koralo Bhamanarange Sesabastana Heri Boami Panai Bhakata Sange Mridanga Bhadya Sunite Mana Abasara Sada Jache Gora Vihita Kirtana Suni Anande Hridaya Nache Jogala Murti Dekhiya Mora Parama Ananda Hoya Prasada Seva Karite Hoya Sakala Papancha Jaya Jedina Grihe Bhajana Dekhi Grihete Goloka Bhaya Charana Sedu Dekhiya Ganga Sukana Simana Paya Tulasi Dekhi Juraya Prana Madhavato Shani Jani Gora Priya Sakha Sevane Jivana Sarthaka Mani Bhakati Vino Krishna Bhajane Anukula Bhaya Jaha Pati Divase Paramasuke Sikara Koro Yeta Suddha Bhakata Charana Renu Bhajana Anukula Bhakata Seva Paramasiddhi Premalati Koromula Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dust from the lotus feet of pure devotees is conducive to devotional service, while service to the Vaishnavas is itself the supreme perfection and the root of the tender creeper of divine love. I observe with great care the holy days like Ekadasi and Janmashtami, for they are the mother of devotion. As my dwelling place, I choose with the greatest of reverence and love the transcendental abode of Sri Krishna. All those places where my Lord Gaurasundar traveled for pastimes, I will visit in the company of loving devotees. My mind always begs for the opportunity to hear the music of the mridanga. Upon hearing the kind of kirtan ordained by Lord Gaurachandra, my heart dances in ecstasy. By beholding the deity forms of the divine couple Sri Radha Krishna, I feel the greatest joy. By honoring the Lord's Prasad, I conquer over all worldly illusions. Goloka Vrindavan appears in my home whenever I see the worship and service of Lord Hari going on there. Upon seeing the Ganges, which is a river of nectar emanating from the lotus feet of the Lord, my happiness knows no bounds. The sight of the holy Tulasi tree soothes my soul, for I know she gives pleasure to Lord Krishna. By honoring Sak, a dear favorite of Lord Chaitanya, I consider life worthwhile. Whatever Bhaktivinoda obtains that is conducive for the service to Sri Krishna, he accepts every day with the greatest of joy. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vijupad Paramahamsa Parivraja Kacharya Ashatala Sata Sri Srimati Svangles A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vijupad Paramahamsa Parivraja Kacharya Ashatala Sata Sri Srimati Svangles Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai प्रेम से को श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्यामा कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय वृंदावन धाम की जय मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय गंगा मई की जय यमुना मई की जय श्रीमती तुलसी देवी की जय भक्ति देवी की जय श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय श्री श्री राधा मदन मोहन की जय श्री श्री गौनिताई की जय श्री श्री जगन्नाथ सुभद्रा बलदेव की जय गौर प्रेमानंदी all glories to the Samadhivatis, all glories to the Samadhivatis, all glories to the Samadhivatis, all glories to Sri Guru Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasubhadaya Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prashadine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Devatarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Today is Ekadasi and also beginning of Julan Yatra. Hare Krishna, auspicious festivals. And we are reading today from Srila Prabhupada Lilamritam, Volume 3. Only he could lead them. This is Srila Prabhupada in San Francisco and India, 1967. The chapter is entitled Swamiji's departure. He is now in San Francisco, 1967, and he is just about to go to India back for some time. This happened after the Rath Yatra in San Francisco of Lord Jagannath Swami. Prabhupada told Kirtanananda that he wanted to play the piano. The Jagannath deities who had sat atop the piano for a week were now back in San Francisco at the temple. But when Kirtanananda and Upendra moved the piano away from the wall, they heard the thud of a falling object. "What is that?" Prabhupada asked. Kirtanananda reached behind the piano and produced a framed canvas wrapped in a madras. He uncovered it and revealed a painting of Lord Narasimhadev. "Why is this hidden behind the piano?" Prabhupada asked. Janaki happened to be visiting at the time, and she confessed. While she had been arranging the house for Prabhupada's arrival, someone had sent the painting out to the house. She had found it and hidden it. It was ghastly, she explained. Lord Narasimha was tearing open Hiranyakashipu's abdomen, and there was blood everywhere. So it was the first time that the devotees at that time, beginners, they had never seen Lord Narasimha before. And it happened that Lord Narasimha was in San Francisco in one of the shops, and they had brought it like that. Patiently, Prabhupada explained that although materialistic people feel sorry for Hiranyakashipu, devotees become ecstatic when they see Narasimhadev tearing him apart. Hiranyakashipu, he said, had terrorized the whole universe and had usurped the throne of Indra, the king of heaven. Hiranyakashipu had even tortured his own 5-year-old son, Prahlad, a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. So there was nothing wrong in Lord Narasimha's pastime. In fact, Hiranyakashipu, having been killed by the Lord, had been liberated. After directing the devotees to hang the picture on the wall, Srila Prabhupada sat down and played the piano. The devotees had seen Prabhupada beautifully play the Indian harmonium, his left hand pumping the bellows, his right hand fingering the keyboard, but never a piano. They were not aware he knew how, but he expertly played the melodies of Indian bhajanas. After about 5 minutes, he stopped. Some evenings, Prabhupada would speak or arrange debates, although Kirtanananda was constantly cautioning. When Prabhupada wanted to speak, it was impossible for any of his disciples to stop him. Sometimes he would ask Kirtanananda to debate with one of the visiting devotees. One devotee would argue for the impersonalist or atheist position, and the other would argue for the Krishna-conscious position. Prabhupada would judge. But no sooner would the argument begin than Prabhupada would interrupt, take the position of the devotee, and defeat the atheistic or impersonalistic arguments. The devotees loved it. Prabhupada was unable to confine himself either to the role of a silent judge or to that of a recuperating patient. Why do we concentrate on the impersonalists? Kirtanananda asked. Why do we attack them so much? Why don't we concentrate our attack on the atheists? You say that because you are an impersonalist, Prabhupada answered angrily. On another occasion, Prabhupada explained that non-devotees who mislead the innocent public are demons and should be exposed. Kirtanananda objected. If we call them demons, They will never come around. But they are demons, Prabhupada replied. But we can't call them demons, Swamiji. Yes, they are demons. Unless you understand this point, you will not make any advancement in Krishna consciousness. Can demons become devotees? Kirtanananda asked. Oh yes, Prabhupada answered. If they chant Hare Krishna and render service, even demons can become devotees. Most of the devotees had to remain in San Francisco, hoping for a chance to visit Swamiji. From the few who knew firsthand, they heard about Swamiji's plans to leave for India, perhaps never to return. It was painful to hear. He is going almost to death, but then returning by Krishna's grace and rejoining them in San Francisco, yet being unable to stay with them as before, and now his plans of going to India, maybe forever. These activities intensify their concern and love for him. Devotees worried, speculating on whether they could carry on without Swamiji. One devotee suggested that perhaps one of Swamiji's godbrothers should come to America and fill in for Swamiji, and if the worst happened, take over the leadership of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. When the suggestion reached Prabhupada, he considered it without immediately replying. Mukunda says, I was sitting alone with Swamiji in his room, and he was very grave and silent. His eyes were closed. Then suddenly tears began flowing from his eyes, and he said in a choked voice, my spiritual master was no ordinary spiritual master. Then he paused for some time, and wiping the tears from his cheeks, he said in an even more choked voice, he saved me. At that point, I began to understand the meaning of spiritual master and dropped all consideration of ever replacing Swamiji. End of quote. After 2 days, Prabhupada said he would not call any of his godbrothers to come and take care of his disciples. He said, if this person speaks just one word different from what I'm speaking, there will be great confusion among you. Actually, he said, the idea was an insult to the spiritual master. Prabhupada said that he would initiate the new followers in San Francisco and ask that they come one at a time and stay overnight. Without performing any fire ceremonies, he simply talked with each new person, asking him to follow the 4 rules and chant 16 rounds a day. When the follower promised, Prabhupada initiated him, sitting on the bed while the disciples sat before him on the floor. Prabhupada would chant quietly on the disciples' beads and then give him or her a spiritual name. One day, one of the new candidates for initiation came in very nervously and bowed down before Prabhupada. The boy did not get up. You can get up now, Prabhupada said. So you want to be initiated? The boy said yes and began chanting, not knowing what else to say. I'll chant on your beads, Prabhupada said. After chanting for 10 minutes, he returned them, saying, your name is Aniruddha. What does that mean? The boy asked. He is the grandson of Krishna. Do you have any questions? Aniruddha could not think of anything. He had already forgotten his name. And Prabhupada said he could go. Later, Prabhupada called for Aniruddha, but Aniruddha did not know what it was, that it was his name being called Aniruddha. Kirtanananda said and looked at him, "Swamiji is calling you." Another boy who came out received the name Uddhava. The next day, as Prabhupada was sitting in the yard, he called, "Kirtanananda, Upendra, Uddhava." He wanted to read them a verse he had encountered while studying Srimad Bhagavatam. Kirtanananda and Upendra came and sat at Prabhupada's feet. "Oh, where is Uddhava?" Prabhupada asked. Upendra told him that Uddhava had gone up to the hills to look at the cows and chant to them. Upendra thought that Swamiji would be pleased to hear that his new disciple had climbed the hills just to chant to the cows. But Prabhupada shook his head unhappily. Restlessness. He had wanted the new boy to hear the verse. Jayati Jayati Devo Devaki Nandanosau Jayati Jayati Krishna Vishnivam Sapadipaha Jayati Jayati Mega Shamala Komalango Jayati Jayati Pridvibharana Somukunda. Prabhupada gave the translation. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as the son of Devaki. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the light of the Vrishni dynasty. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose bodily luster is like that of a new cloud, and whose body is as soft as lotus flowers. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who walks on the planet Earth to deliver the world from the scorn of demons and who can offer liberation to everyone. After repeating the Sanskrit and the translation, he told them they could return to their duties. Prabhupada told Kirtanananda he had definitely decided to go to India via New York as soon as possible. Kirtanananda packed Swamiji's things and drove Swamiji down to San Francisco to spend the night at the temple. They would leave the next morning. The temple and even Prabhupada's apartment were very hectic that night, with many devotees and guests wanting to see Prabhupada and dozens of people wanting initiation. When Kirtanananda advised Prabhupada not to exert himself by going down for the evening program, Prabhupada insisted on at least going and sitting during the kirtan. When he entered the storefront, the devotees immediately stopped their kirtan, dropping down to offer obeisances. There was a hush. He commanded a new reverence. This might be the last time they would see him. They watched him during the kirtan as he played his kartals, singing with them for the last time. The uninitiated wanted to accept him as their spiritual master. Tonight, before it was too late, Srila Prabhupada asked for the microphone. No one had expected him to speak. Kirtanananda, the only person in a position to restrain him, said nothing and sat before him like the others, submissive and expectant. Prabhupada spoke quietly about his mission. Under the order of his spiritual master, he was bringing Lord Chaitanya's movement to America, and Krishna had kindly sent him so many sincere souls. I have a few children in India from my family days, he said, but you are my real children. Now I'm going to India for a little while. Everyone fixed his attention on Swamiji as he sat before them, leaning against the mattress-covered wall, speaking softly. Suddenly, the door opened, and Ravindra Swarup unhappily entered. Everyone knew that Ravindra Swarup wanted to leave Krishna consciousness. He had not taken his initiation vows seriously. He wanted to move on. He didn't want a spiritual master anymore. The other devotees had discouraged him, but he had persisted. They were incredulous. How could he do such a thing on the night before Swamiji's departure? Ravindra Swarup fell to the floor to offer obeisances, but he did not rise up. Instead, he began crawling on his hands and knees towards Prabhupada. Ravindra usually had a cavalier manner, enhanced by handsome face, long tussed-led hair, and a beard. But now he was wretched and sobbing and crazy. He crawled towards Prabhupada, but sat but 2 steps off the floor on the simple redwood dais. Prabhupada looked at him with compassion. "Come here, my boy." Ravindra crawled up the steps and placed his bushy head on Prabhupada's lap. Moved, the devotees watched as Prabhupada stroked Ravindra's head, and the boy cried and cried. "What's wrong, my son? You don't have to be so unhappy." Ravindra bawled out, "I want," he sobbed, "to reach God directly, without anyone in between." Prabhupada continued to pat and stroke the boy's head. "No, you continue to stay with us if possible. Don't be a crazy fellow." Ravindra's weeping subsided, and Prabhupada continued, speaking both to Ravindra and to the emotion-struck group in the room. "I am an old man," he said. "I may die at any moment. But please, you all carry on this Sankirtan movement. You have to become humble and tolerant. As Lord Chaitanya says, be as humble as a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. You must have enthusiasm and patience to push on this Krishna conscious philosophy." Suddenly, Ravindra's tears were gone. He jumped up, dejectedly stood, hesitating for a moment, and then hurried out the door, banging it behind him. Ravindra Swarup's dramatic exit from Krishna consciousness shocked the devotees. Prabhupada sat still and continued speaking to them gravely, asking them to stick together and push on the movement for their own benefit and for others. Whatever they had learned, he said, they should repeat. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that they were part of a preaching mission, a movement. They were together not just for good times and good vibrations. They had a loving obligation to Swamiji and Krishna. Prabhupada returned to his apartment, which soon became chaotic. It was late. Many people wanted initiation. Mukunda, Jayananda, and other temple leaders tried to determine which candidates were sincere. They selected candidates, half a dozen at a time, and allowed them into Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada sat behind his little desk, chanted on each person's beads, and returned them, giving each person a spiritual name. Kirtanananda requested him to stop. Further initiation could be done through the mail. But Prabhupada said he would continue initiating whoever was present. Mukunda and Jayananda set priorities. Some persons had been waiting months to be initiated and were obviously sincere. Others would have to be turned away. John Carter says, "At the end of the lecture, I was sure that I wanted to be initiated. And even though there was some talk of being initiated by mail, I knew I wanted to have that personal connection with my spiritual master and be personally initiated by him." personally accepted. I ran up to Mukunda and said, "How many are on the list? I would like to get on the list." He said, "Well, Swamiji is not really taking them in any particular order. We are just going to try to pick out the most sincere people." "Please put my name on the list," I said. "I am really sincere. I really want to be initiated." So he put me down and took the list up to Swamiji, and Swamiji began calling for people one by one. After the third person, when my name was not called, I became a little worried. Then after the fourth person, I was really sitting on edge. Then when they called the fifth person, and it wasn't me, I was totally destroyed. I felt, oh, he is going to India, and then he is going back to Krishna. I just lost my chance. This is it. There is no use in me living anymore. I was trying to make it to the coat rack and get my coat and get out before anybody could see me crying. I had not started crying, but I could tell it was coming. A couple of people patted me on the back and said, "It's all right. He can write you a letter and tell you your name." All I could think was, yes, the way he was talking tonight, it may never happen. I could barely stand up. I went outside and started walking across the parking lot towards Golden Gate Park. I was kind of heading towards the Golden Gate Bridge. I thought, I'd just jump off. I hadn't been there long enough to understand that if you commit suicide, you have to become a ghost. I just figured my life was useless. I got about halfway across the parking lot when the idea struck me. What if he decided to take one more and I was out here somewhere? The thought filled me with so much hope that I turned around and ran back to the temple. And just as I walked in the front of the temple, Janaki ran down and said, "He will take one more." And she grabbed somebody else and ran up the stairs. I felt my knees start to collapse, and tears came jutting out of my eyes. Harsharani was standing there, and she grabbed me by the arm and said, "Come with me." She raced up the stairs, pulling me to the top, and burst into Swamiji's room without even knocking. Swamiji looked up with amazement. She said, "Swamiji, you have to initiate this boy." I was just bawling, and Swamiji began to laugh. He said, "It's all right. Don't cry. Everything will be all right." He chanted on my beads and gave me the name Jivananda. The next morning, Prabhupada had to leave his affectionate followers. Several cars filled with devotees accompanied him to the San Francisco airport. Nandarani says, "Some were sincere and some were crying because it was appropriate to cry when the spiritual master leaves. Actually, none of us really knew much about what the spiritual master was." Janaki mischievously stole the ticket and passport from Prabhupada's hand. "Now you can't go," she said. "That's all right," he smiled. "I already have my boarding ticket. I am Indian. They will let me into my own country." Prabhupada turned to his adoring followers gathered close around him at the boarding gate. "Actually, I have only one desire, and whoever does this will please me very much. Now I have a temple in New York, in Montreal, and a temple in San Francisco, but I do not have any temple in Los Angeles." He told them to remain in Krishna consciousness and to please preach. They watched as he turned and walked through the gate, his cane in one hand, boarding pass in the other. We can end this reading here today. Any questions or any comments? At the beginning, Kirtanananda was objecting why Prabhupada is speaking so much against the impersonalists. And actually, the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is diametrically opposed to impersonalism. So, in order to become Krishna conscious, as Prabhupada explained, it is imperative that one should know the opposite party and defeat the opposite party with sound arguments. In this way, we cannot be led astray. We cannot be taken out of Krishna consciousness if we are firmly convinced that Krishna consciousness is the topmost philosophy. And if we consider impersonalism as just like almost same and just a different aspect of a spiritual Indian philosophy. So one should be very much convinced of the perfection in Krishna consciousness and the defect of impersonal philosophy. Otherwise, we shall be here and there, sometimes here, sometimes there, going here and there, listening to these impersonal philosophers. There are so many at that time in America and everywhere else. They are traveling and they became famous as good speakers, expert in talking and speaking impersonal philosophy, many, and not giving any strict principles. Whatever you want to do, you do, there's no problem. You just hear from me and you become my follower. Some of them asking for some small donation. You give me 500 rupees, you become my devotees, like that. So this type of preachers, impersonal philosophers were very much prominent even at the Srila Prabhupada. And that is why Prabhupada wanted very clearly that we should be clearly distinguished from all of them. Here also in Hyderabad, sometime I was mentioning that in 1976, that at the time of opening of this temple, Srila Prabhupada was giving lecture, and as usual, in his lecture, he condemned the impersonal philosophy. And after the lecture was over, one of the, maybe a reporter or somebody from the audience raised his hand. Swamiji, in the Bhagavad Gita it is said that the Pandits, they see everyone equally. They don't make any distinction. Then why you are criticizing the impersonalists? As a Pandit, you should see everyone equally. Then Prabhupada answered to that question that, yes, I see everyone equal. That means I see everyone equally in need of Krishna consciousness. That was a perfect answer by Srila Prabhupada, and I can remember his voice even to this day. So there was no reply, no more argument. That person who asked the question, thank you, Swamiji. Yes, Krishna consciousness is for everyone. This is the ultimate goal of life for everyone. And the opposite philosophy, that is simply taking us down. So this is the perfect devotee of the Lord, the pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, never making any compromise against trying to make friendship or to associate or to praise others who have a different philosophy. Sticking strictly to Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, and nothing else than that. Srimad Bhagavatam, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and in this way, Srila Prabhupada's mission was successful because of not making any easy compromise, thinking these boys, they don't know anything, so let us gather them, you do whatever you think is okay, you simply become my follower, that's all. That is not Prabhupada's way of preaching. Any other questions or comments? We can also appreciate Srila Prabhupada tolerating his physical condition and not forgetting his mission. He is leaving, going to go to India back just to recover his health, and again going back to America afterwards, and again everywhere, going to all the countries of the world to fulfill his Guru Maharaj order to preach Krishna consciousness everywhere in the world. So Prabhupada did not consider that now I'm so old, let me retire. And whatever I've done, I cannot do more than that. That is not in Prabhupada's mind. His mind is only how to fulfill his Guru Maharaj order and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Any other questions?
Roji. Hare Krishna. Roji, in this reading, it was so heart-touching, the story of John Cutter. He wanted to commit suicide. He did not get initiation from Prabhupada. So many times in youths, also such kind of thoughts will come. You are good for nothing. How to counteract the words of mind and save ourselves?
In one sense, that particular aspiring disciple was very eager to take initiation, so that's a very good point. But the other side of it is that because of his past habits, maybe he was a drug addict or something, so his mind was not fixed, in the sense that easily he can become crazy. So he was crazy in one sense. At the same time, he was sincere in taking Diksha. So Srila Prabhupada could understand this, that although this boy is a young boy and he's somewhat crazy, but if Prabhupada could see some sincerity in him, in this way he gave him Diksha. So Prabhupada could understand the mind of these young people, and he could appreciate that some of them are sincere, so they can take Diksha, initiation, and remain together. Prabhupada, very important instruction. You remain together and preach the mission. So by remaining together, then they cannot deviate, they cannot go astray and leave the movement. Let them remain together. That is the spiritual force. So Prabhupada gave this instruction in this way. And yeah.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. What is the duty of pure devotee after initiation from the Guru? Guru Dakshina.
What is the duty of a new disciple?
Towards Guruji.
Towards Guruji. At the time of initiation, Srila Prabhupada chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and he gives instruction to the new disciple. You chant minimum 16 rounds every day, and you follow these 4 regulative principles. That is Prabhupada instruction. And other instructions are there, that you remain together, all disciples, and carry out the mission of the preaching Krishna consciousness everywhere. So in this way, these principles are given by Srila Prabhupada at the time of giving Diksha. So the disciple who is initiated, he must understand these instructions. If he has any question, he can ask, and he must follow these instructions. Otherwise, he is not a bona fide disciple. He must follow. Any other questions? Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada Lilamritam ki jai, Sri Satyarup Das Goswami ki jai.